Hello everyone, and welcome to just a look at this beautiful tarot deck, La Flora. I learned about this deck. I don't even remember where I first learned about it, but I did not do the Kickstarter. But I learned about it, and then I found a video about it on Kasha's channel, Tarot Map. And I watched her review, and I just fell in love with the deck. And so I watched a couple other reviews, and then I watched Kasha's review again because it really gave me most of the information that I needed to know. And I love that she showed a little bit of the PDF that comes with the deck, so I could decide whether or not I wanted to buy the book or not. And this deck, it's just a really special tarot deck. It is not a typical tarot deck. It is not a deck that you would just pick up and read intuitively, unless you have a lot of experience and you really know the tarot system. So you'll see why when I show you the cards. But I think what struck me first about this deck is the artwork. And you can even see just from the, the packaging how beautiful it is. I am a person who loves monochromatic artwork. I love ink and graphite. If I, as an artist, as a visual artist and mark maker, if I had to choose between working with color and working with black and white and gray, I would choose black and white and gray every time. I love color, I love doing it, but if I had to make the choice, that would be my choice. I find it, I don't know why, it's just in me, and it's just what I like. So I'm very attracted to monochromatic artwork and monochromatic decks in general. I have a few. The latest one that I purchased, which was, I don't know, a while ago now, was Tarot of the Abyss by Anatolian, and I love that deck. I don't think we lose anything if the artwork is done well. Kim Kranz, The Wild Unknown, was probably the first. I call it monochromatic because it's mostly black and white. There is some color in it, and I don't mind that at all. I think for that deck it's really important. But that was probably the first one that I ever purchased. So this is La Flora Tarot, and it's put out by La Luli, all right, which the artist and creator says are the first two initials of her three nieces' names, which is lovely. So La Luli is the name of the company, and it's sold through their website, which is, I think it's laluli.com. So whenever I have a box like this that has a seal on it, I open it from the bottom, and you can see the attention to detail is even inside the box. It's really remarkable. It's a very sturdy box. However, I have been using this deck more and more, and so I really think that once, I don't know, I'll probably make a case for it, because I find tuck boxes unpleasant to use. It's beautifully made. It's very sturdy. It's just a personal thing. There's just not enough room for me. And I have actually damaged cards before, trying to fit them into tuck boxes, because over time, a deck swells a little bit. I can't explain it, but over time, it gets a little thicker. I don't know how, but it does, at least in my experience. So this deck is the traditional 78 tarot deck, but it has some extra cards, and we'll see those. I am not going to walk through this whole deck. There are many reviews of this deck that already do that, so you could watch one of those. But I am going to show you a few of the cards. The first card I want to show you is this. This is an extra card. It's the Flora card. And I love Kasha's idea of setting her aside in front of me when I use these cards as the voice of the reading. It's just such a lovely image. and there's a gentleness but also a wiseness in her expression. And so often I'll just set it up in front of me to read with it. I just want to read to you what the creator says about Flora. I did decide to get the book when I bought this deck, and I am so happy that I did. And I wanted to use it a while before I did this video, but Laura Cortez is the creator. I'll read that in a minute, but I want to tell you about Flora. It's page 185. Okay. Flora. Flora's name comes from the Latin flos, meaning flower, blossom, and youthful prime. She's the Roman goddess of flowering plants, primarily those that bear fruit. She is also the goddess of the season of spring, the season of rejuvenation and the budding of youth. She has elements of a love goddess and its attributes, fertility, sex, and blossoming, and is one of the several fertility goddesses. Flora was the twin sister to Fauna, the goddess of animals and wildlife, originally called Sabine. Flora was originally a nymph called Chloris, who was kissed by the west wind Zephyrus and turned into Flora. And what I also love about this creator is she is very good about showing her references. I like that. So that's the Flora card. Okay. The other extra cards are the Seeker, which she talks about, and Make It Lucky. Me and you and everyone we know, the Seeker card, and then Make It Lucky, Love, Hope, Faith, and Luck. The questions you ask will shape your life. So, and she also includes a black card and a white card, and talks about those as well. And I think you could use them in so many different ways. And Kasha from Tarot Map, I highly recommend her review. In fact, I will link it. I apologize, I have to keep stopping because I'm coughing and I don't want to cough on camera. I will link Tasha's, sorry, I can't even talk, Kasha's video, because she just has a lot of beautiful ideas with this deck. And I think it's a really great review to watch if you're considering it. So that's Flora, and so that's what I do. I just do what Kasha suggested, and I just sort of put her in front of me. So the deck itself, let me move the book, and I just want to show you some of the cards and how they look. So all of the cards are done in black and white stippling, okay? And they all have, they're borderless, and yet they have this white border inside that I think is absolutely brilliant because it gives the artwork room. There's no outside border, but it allows for this really important placement of the names of the plant and the name of the tarot card. So for instance, this is the star card, all right? And she has chosen an orchid as the star card, and it gives the Latin name and the common name. All right. This is the Six of Cups. So again, common name, Latin name, and the number of the card, and the number of the card, right? And then the Queen of Pentacles, common name, Latin name. This is the Belladonna lily. This is the Phoenix eye fruit. Okay. So as you can see, if you are not someone deeply familiar with botany, you're not going to know much. And the images themselves are beautiful, but they're not going to say much to you as far as a tarot reading. You could certainly, if you're very familiar with the Rider-Waite system or tarot in general, you could read it that way without, just from your knowledge. I don't like to read that way. It's not how I read. I read very intuitively. So for me, this is a deck that will be used in a special way, all right? It's not a deck that I'm going to pull out and then pull 3 cards and do an intuitive reading with it. Unless I somehow get to know this deck and the book very, very well, I don't see that happening. all right? Look how beautifully the artwork sort of flows from one to the next because of the way the art reaches the edges and then those white borders. It's just absolutely stunning. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I have a very specific way that I'm using this deck. I will show you that toward the end of this video, but I just want you to see how it looks. So let's look at the Hierophant. This is the Hierophant. The plant is the Mari plant, and there's the Latin name. I won't even try to pronounce it, but let's look it up in the book. The book is exquisite, and it's like a study tome. It is put together so beautifully, and it is an education, I will tell you. I'm going to read this to you. She says, "Is La Flora for me? La Flora Tarot is not a deck for beginners. If that is you, I strongly recommend the Rider-Waite deck, as it does an impeccable job in presenting the rich, classic, and time-tested symbology that tarot is recognized for. I also recommend the study of the book 78 Degrees of Wisdom, A Tarot Journey to Self-Awareness by Rachel Pollack. Now, if you are already initiated in the art of tarot reading, I welcome you to La Flora Tarot. Be aware, though, my goal while creating this deck was to go beyond the delightful pleasure of classical botanical illustrations. The goal, from the beginning, was to meaningfully and purposefully connect plants to tarot archetypes in a way that would bring a new layer of significance to the reading table," which I think is really beautiful. It's like I said, this deck has a purpose. It's very specific. It's also a work of art, so we can look at it that way also as collectors. It's like holding a bunch of beautiful drawings in your hand, but we want to use these. Tarot decks are useful. They're useful art, right? So let's look up the Hierophant, and we'll just read it. She gives a lot of information here in the beginning that's just magnificent to read, and so many beautiful quotes and things like that. So for each, I mean, it's remarkable. So for each of these of the major arcana, she gives quite a bit of information. So here is the Hierophant, card number 5. She gives the card art, and it's large and beautiful. And if you are someone who likes to draw flowers, I mean, it's really, really impressive and fun to look at. So the Hierophant, she gives, again, the Latin name and the common name, and then a quote every time. "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby becomes a monster. And if thou gaze long into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze into thee." Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher. So the quotes are heady and food for thought. And a lot of times when I use this deck and I do a reading with it, I write the quote in my journal, and I just write down my thoughts about the quote for a minute, because it gives me a feeling for how this card might help me work through whatever it is that my question was asking for help with, right? So she starts by giving information on the plant, and I'm not going to read every word here, but it's very specific information, botanical information about this plant, some interesting facts about it, and some general information. And then she goes into the tarot. And so this is about the Hierophant, wisdom obtained through ancestry and through spiritual love. Honor, acknowledgement, and respect to the lives that came before and paved the way. Not only adaptation, but most importantly, true appreciation for ceremonies, rituals, and traditions already established. This is not the time to rebel, but to honor the existing order and knowledge, and to make real sacrifices. So that's her take on the Hierophant. Whether you agree with it or not, that's up to you. But when I'm using this deck, I do read what she says and consider it. She gives 3 keywords for every card. And here she gives tradition, conformity, and beliefs. And if you are using this deck and you want to be in a hurry and just get a quick take on something, there you go. You've got your 3 keywords. Then she does something called the match, which compares and talks about why she chose this plant, the Mari plant, for the Hierophant archetype. The name Corymbia, in Latin corymbium, a corym, refers to the arrangement of flowers in clusters where the flowers branch from the stem at different levels but ultimately terminate at about the same level. In La Flora, this behavior connects to the idea represented by the Hierophant, which indicates our own inner sense of order and obedience to traditions presented to us. Corymbia's flowers are organized as a traditional unity would. The common name Mari is a Noongar word for blood. The tree is native from Australia, and Noongar are Aboriginal Australian peoples, which has been used to describe the red sap that weeps from wounds in the bark. Again, the plant's name lends itself to its match to the Hierophant. Blood in many different cultures and traditions are deeply connected to the human condition of mortality and, more importantly, in this instance, to the sacrifice to rulers. And then she gives some artwork for the major arcanas. So here she says the cross of Christ above a fountain with vines in the background. 2 saints, Anthony the Great and Paul the Hermit, sit in the foreground and hold their cups under the fountain to receive the blood of Christ like wine. So that's it for this one. Sometimes they're much longer and sometimes they're shorter like this. So for me, what I do is I consider the plant, I consider what she says about the card and the tarot, and I consider how she joins them. And it almost always, and I consider the keywords, and it almost, pretty much always sparks something interesting in myself to think about and write about. This deck is not a lazy deck. It is a deck that you have to work for, right? It's an education. It has an intelligence about it that asks more of me than most of my other decks ask of me. And I really like that. And I have 2 other decks that do that. And I'm going to show you those because, funny enough, they're perfect pairings for this deck. So that's kind of how it's laid out. And then if you want to look at another one, the Lovers has quite a bit more than the Hierophant. I really loved the star. But the artwork she chooses is just magnificent. Temperance is really beautiful. It's the peony. The Tower, beautiful. Okay, here's the star. She chooses the Orchid. Dwell on the beauty of life. Watch the stars and see yourself running with them. Marcus Aurelius. I really, really liked what she had to say about the Orchid and the star, and it made a lot of sense to me. So, and this is an interesting one because it goes on and she gives some other information about orchids and Charles Darwin. So sometimes there's just extra. Look at that. Oh, here, this one, the moon has extra too. It's really, really, really thoughtful and beautiful and classical, and I feel like I get a little smarter when I use this deck. It stretches me. It asks more of me. And I think that's one of the things I love about it most. My book, when it came, was bent. I was really bummed about that. This here and here. Because it is so beautiful. But it's okay. It still works perfectly well. So yeah. And then here she gives all of her references, which you can look into if you want. It's fantastic. Really fantastic book. So those are the cards. So I want to show you how I use them. And again, I'm not going to go through the whole deck because there are so many videos and that show that already. You can watch one of those. And I don't even know if Kasha goes through them all, but there are others that just flip through the deck and don't even say anything. So you could watch some of those if you want to. I like to be surprised. I don't like to watch entire flip throughs. You know, sometimes I'll check out the major arcana and look at 2 different cards that are really important to me. And if I like those, then I've seen enough. And if I'm going to buy the deck, I don't want to see a whole flip through. It's just, I don't know. It's just me. So this, I'm going to talk about the cardstock for a moment. It's wonderful. It's the same kind of cardstock that Pagan Otherworlds and their oracles, the Usi decks have. It's very beautiful, slippery linen cardstock, very flexible. It is far too big for my hands to shuffle, so I can barely reach my fingers around them. And it's impossible for me to shuffle this deck. So keep that in mind. This is, here's a regular size tarot deck. So you can see it's just that much bigger. That makes it hard for me. I mean, you might have long, slender fingers. I don't. So it's just impossible to shuffle. Okay. So how I use this deck is I rarely just pull from this deck. I use 2 other decks with it. And I'll show you those in a minute. But I basically shuffle, cut it, pull a card. So I pulled the Devil card. And it is Datura, which if any of you know Datura, it's the perfect plant for the Devil card. The next deck that I use is the Materia Prima deck, an expression of matter from Usi. And you will see it is just, this is also another deck that stretches me. It asks more of me than most decks. It's a deck that I feel like I've learned something. It stretches me, it asks more of me. It's not a deck that I read intuitively. I use the guidebook and I really think about it. So look at the backs. Oh, this is not about this deck though, so I'm not going to get into that. So here's a card from that, and I chose Copernicum. Okay, so this deck has a whiter background, sort of a soft white. The other 2 that I'm going to show you have an off-white. Oh, these tuck boxes. See, this card, I've had this deck a while, and it's starting to swell, and it just doesn't fit well into the box anymore. So I am going to make a case for this very soon. And my super oracle that I'm about to show you absolutely is impossible to fit in here. So this one I did open from the top when I got this as a gift from someone a few years ago. And I just didn't even think about it, and I did it. So this is the Super Oracle, also from Usi. And again, one of the decks that I absolutely love because it's monochromatic. Yeah, it's just what I dig. I don't know what to say. Okay, so the nice things about Oracle decks, you don't have to shuffle too much. Okay, so there's my card. Now this deck does have a little bit of color in a few cards in the Sacred Geometry cards. That's kind of fun. Okay, so I have Copernicum, the Devil, and a square being offered. Now, if you look at this, I mean, to read intuitively, I mean, I could if I sat a long time with it, and you know, but I just find I get so much out of these guidebooks, and I love them. So the guidebooks for the Usi decks look like this, and they are wonderful, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful paper, beautiful everything. So let's look up Copernicum. Now this deck is a little tricky because it's not in alphabetical order. It's done by the periodic table, okay? So Copernicum, you basically just have to look through, but I know that that's a higher number, so I know I can go to the next page. So it's number 112 on the periodic table. So here it is, Copernicum, and it starts on page 203. It's part of the Transactinides. So 203, which are really fascinating. I mean, the art in this is so gorgeous, God. These cards actually go together to make another piece of artwork when you put them together. It's really cool. Okay, this is the last card. So the transactinides, they're called the melancholic elements, right? And let me just read you this part. So what more was there left late in the periodic table? A strange variety of elements, a super heavy, human-made, disciplined group of marvels known as the transactinides, dazzling for only an instant, brought into the world through a violent cascade of intoxicating skills. These transition metal elements were pressured by overwhelming forces to appear merely for our observation. We summon these glittering exceptions of nature into existence through nuclear tricks and arts, preposterous hybrids, sensational novelties unique to the Earth's history, whose precisely calculated presence barely managed a landing. Once here, the emptiness from which they came soon closed in on them. So you can see this is not lighthearted, right? It's fascinating though. And for someone, I mean, chemistry was my favorite science class. I just love this stuff. So it's wonderful for that geek in me. So here we have Copernicum. We leave, it's the last element. All right, so that's important. We leave the table on the mathematical enigma Copernicum. The riddle that began this charted journey, no matter how you measure it, calculate, dissect, distill, or combine it. The mystery always delivers the same message, the same number, the golden number. We want to think that the golden number is love, and its ardent, magical destination is within all of life, all matter. Love is our materia prima, and it is visible in our world's circulatory wholeness, which exquisitely sustains our universe's complex and diverse majesty within all matter. It is the spiritual serenity of the eternal. Love gives us the soulful courage to bear and endure all, and with it, we cannot fail. So let's remember that. The spiritual serenity of the eternal. And with love, we cannot fail. Okay? So that's my first card. And then I go to the guidebook for the devil. Where are you? 15. No? Oh, here. Okay. So the devil is Datura Metal, devil's trumpet. To light one candle to God and another to the devil is the principle of wisdom. Jose Bergaman. So she talks about Datura, which is a very, very poisonous plant. Very, very. It has been used medicinally throughout many traditional cultures, but it's nothing to mess with. The tarot says the devil might very well be the most dangerously powerful card in tarot. It speaks of shadows we do not want to face, but must. The traditional interpretation of the devil depicts it as a force of illusion and oppression. The devil's power exists in the illusion that nothing else exists. Rachel Pollack, that's her quote. Living in the dark hidden areas of the self, the devil is powerful, controlling, and persuasive while playing as a highly skilled puppet master who is hard to resist. Illusion, materialism, and misery. Part of the nightshade family, Datura is a plant known for its narcotic and hallucinogenic powers. Scopolamine and hyoscine, some extremely hazardous neurotoxins, are derived from Datura. Scopolamine is a tasteless, odorless, mind-altering substance, fatal at high doses, but most notoriously known for producing loss of memory and hallucinations. Scopolamine acts by blocking the neurotransmitters that carry information to the part of the brain responsible for storing short-term memory. Whatever happens to people under the effect of it is simply not registered by the brain. So does not go along with the idea of the devil archetype, that the things in our life that draw us in and take over us without us even knowing it. Addictions, right? The Swiss alchemist Paracelsus was remembered for recognizing that the distinction between medicine and poison is a matter of dose. You might have encountered scopolamine before, since it is most used in transdermal plasters to treat travel sickness. So there are benefits to its use, whereas its abuse is something we are not even willing to contemplate. Illusion, materialism, misery. Are you the devil, or maybe its puppet? One must break his or her acquiescence or even willingness to live in illusion for the sake of being seemingly comfortable with the status quo to, instead, face the hard questions which must be asked and absorb the brutally honest answers required for our change. The key to set oneself free from the devil is, first and foremost, to acknowledge his existence. Its existence, right? It's an archetype. So, beautiful artwork. Yeah. So that's fascinating and a really good choice, I think, and really gets you thinking about how the devil archetype can work in our lives, right? Here we have the blessing of love in our lives. Here we have the danger of addictions. Let's see what this says. So the Super Oracle is the same. Beautiful book. The papers are just, I don't know. I love this deck so much. Okay. So it's back here, I know. Okay. So this card is called Terra Firma. The living mystery of the earth, discovered in the simple yet monumental ground below us, is the primary direct experience of human consciousness. So much is freely offered to us from this great spirit of earth, the raw material of existence, whose dark, rich soil is filled with life to come. The terra firma inheritance that is our power and our destiny. Unsparing, wild, self-contemplative, restive, and destiny. So my take on it is we can conquer our devils with firm footing in the natural world and in reality, because the natural world is reality, and reality is magical enough, right? And love. That's how I would read this. Very simple, but along the way, I've learned something, and it stretches me. And if this were my reading, like this morning, I had a reading, I wrote like 4 pages in my journal about the cards that I pulled this morning. They stretch me. They ask more of me, and that's why I love these decks. So I hope this was helpful. It's, you know, it's just not, it's not your average deck. It asks more of us. Look at the moon. I love what she says about this card, the primrose. It's a Japanese primrose. 4 of Swords. I haven't pulled that one yet. 9 of Cups. Yeah, it's just really, 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 really wonderful. If you have a desire to do some work, right? It definitely asks us to work. So, all right, I hope this was enjoyable to you. It is just an absolutely exquisite deck that I treasure. And again, I always take Flora and I put her right on top. And thank you, Kasha, if you ever watch this video, for that wonderful idea and some of your other ideas, which I hope people, I'm going to link your video because I really hope people will watch it. I learned a lot from it. Got a lot of great ideas. This is already difficult. So that's my next task. I've got an embroidery project underway right now. As a gift to my daughter. And then I want to make one for my mom, and then I'm gonna make cases for these 3 tuck box decks, because it's just I'm just afraid they're gonna get ruined eventually. They're beautiful and they're really well made, but not my favorite. And it could just be the way I handle them. I don't know. Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was enjoyable and helpful in some way. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Take care.